Make a little adjustment on the brake pedals. One thing I noticed is when I push the brake in, it just catches on the fiberglass and it gets stuck. Got the clearance in the hole now, so now we have no brake sticking, so got that fixed. One more brake item I want to work on is, ever since I put this master cylinder on, which is a brand new one, I've never been able to get this to seal up here. And even without pressing the brake, I can clean that off and come back a week or so later, and that'll be wet again right there. So I was reading where we can anneal the copper crush washers, make them softer, because I noticed these copper washers, they didn't really crush much. They're pretty hard. So and I put new ones on, but I'm going to take this back off, anneal. I've got some other copper crush washers, and I'm going to anneal those and put those back on and see if I can get that to seal up. I'm looking real close at this. I don't see any imperfections. Got some decent crush on both of the washers, so maybe there was just a piece of dirt or something in there. I'll just put some new ones on and we'll try again. And I also ran this by hand without the crush washers all the way up to make sure, you know, I wasn't bottoming out on threads or something, and the bottom side of that bolt head would go flush with the block there, so no issue there. So, okay, I've got the new annealed copper crush washers on there. After I annealed them, they're super pliable. I could bend them with my fingers pretty easy. So I'll give the brake pedal a few pushes and make sure that stays dry like that. That's a good sign. I pumped it about 10 times, and then the 10th time I pressed it about as hard as I could and held it for like 10 or 15 seconds, and we have nothing there, so that's great. I think maybe we've got that sealed up, and I can put a little bit of black paint back on that where I'll clean that off and put some black paint back on there. And with the paint on there, it looks a lot better now. So you might wonder, I was working on electrical on the car, and then I took this diversion on brakes for a minute, and the reason I did that is I'm getting ready to work on the wiring for the rear brakes, and I knew I was going to be pressing the pedal, you know, checking the pressure switch and all that, and every time I press the brake pedal I get master brake fluid on the ground, so I wanted to prevent that. So now we're ready to go back to some wiring on the brakes and the rear lights. For the fuel gauge, when I did hook up the wires for the tail lights, in that same connector was the wire for the fuel gauge. I went ahead and hooked it up, but I've never checked it yet, so we'll take a look. There's probably, I don't know, 5 gallon or something in there. It's probably about half full, less. Yep, yeah. So that's good news. Looks like the fuel gauge works. Okay, I found the issue on the front end wiring. We got this ground cable that has to be connected to the horn also. The horn needs ground, but there's nothing on the whole front end that connects the ground to the frame. There's a nice hole right there, so I'm just going to make a connection from here to there, and as soon as I touch this wire to the frame, the lights on the front end started working. So we just got to get us a good ground to frame, and then they should be fine. Okay, now we got the ground connection to the frame. Come back here and we'll check our bulbs out now. And got parking bulbs. Now this one over here was really bright before, and you can put the bulbs in 180-degree different, and there's a bright filament and a low filament. So I rotated the bulb 180 degrees, so when the parking lights, it's on the low light, and then the turn signals, when they flash, that signal will be the brights, or at least the bright lights on these signal indicators. So now we got parking lights forward and rear. Just hook the wires up to the foot switch for the headlights. The power from inside comes into the middle screw, and then it doesn't really matter which one you put the high and low lights on. There's a wire that has there's a connection that has 2 wires, and that's for the high beam. So whenever you flip the switch to that circuit, the wire goes into the dash also to light up the little red light to let you know you got the high beams on, and then that energizes the brighter element. So I've turned the lights on, and let's see, we got headlights now, and if I put my foot on the switch, we should get a red light over here. Yep, so the high beams work and the lights get brighter. So got the headlights working. Last piece on the electric was hooking up the lights for the dash, and there's a little rheostat on the back side of this light switch. But now we've got the dash lights working, and we can dim those. The rheostat's working fine. So all the electric's finished. Okay, to get these brake lights and signal lights hooked up, this is the switch that goes up in the turn signal piece, and this is just the light that'll go inside that assembly for the left right, you know, blinker to click on and off inside there, a little light in there. And these other wires are pretty straightforward. There's 3 different colors here. These 3 guys will match and plug into this guy. They just shove in from the top here. And then the other end of these, there's 4 of them, you know, 2 going to the back of the car and 2 going to the front of the car. And here's the one going to the back, and here's the one going to the front, and they'll just push in. So I know where those all go. The problem is this little switch is not behaving correctly. I'm trying to do continuity. I don't want to hook it all up and have it not work. But when I flip the switch, I should have some continuity between some of these wires, and there's nothing happening. So I've got good connection on the supply lines coming up to the switch. There's no issue there. So I'm gonna take this cap off this switch and just see if everything's corroded in there or what. See if we can get the connections working. So this is the inside of the switch. Looks nice and clean there. And then we can see this part. You can see where it slides back and forth. We'll clean these contacts off. They might have a lot of corrosion on them. But then we can check the continuity between these points and all the wires, and then make sure we're getting the connection here. You unbend those, they crimp over the back side of this. But these contacts were just corroded over, so I had to clean those up. Got really good continuity now. I can touch between here. Now the challenge is the sliding mechanism in there is extremely complex. There's a piece that slides back and forth. These are the contact pads on the top. There's 2 of those. And then these little contact pads have these springs underneath of here. There's little holes under there that those springs go in. And then these rocker tabs go in there. And when you move the signal switch down, it kind of stays in that position. You know, you can, a little bit of force, you overcome it, take it back to neutral position. Well, what keeps it in that position of left or right are these little tiny springs and this little metal tongue is what I'd say. When you slide the switch over, it just squeezes it in between here and the spring. So it acts as a little clamping force to hold the signal there. So now, of course, I took it apart and one of the springs went flying. Those things are tiny. Luckily, McMaster car has those. They're little 1/8 springs by 1/4 inch high. So now I get to try to put all that back together. So should be fun. There's step one of the parts. See how small they are. Getting this turn signal housing on. So you put the wires in and attach the switch there. And then this spring-loaded guy goes on there. And then there's a wheel that goes on here. And then we have the lever, which will come through like this, and where this, oops, got the wheel upside down. And then where this screw will go through down here. And then this guy helps keep it in the center. And then the light has a little push pin here for the signal indicator. So we got the spring-loaded wheel here, bulb. I just have to set the arm up in there and bring it together. Got the turn signal hooked up. Don't have it grounded, so this light's not blinking. I touched it to a ground, it blinks. You can hear the flasher clicking. Got it on the left signal, it's working. Come back here to the right. Yep. So the left turn signal works. Now we're checking the right turn signals. Yep, that one's working. Yep. Getting ready to put the horn wire in. Fed a wire up through here so I can pull the cable through. It's hard to push the cable down through there. And there was no Kaiser Darrin or Kaiser center horn wire that I could find. So this is off of a Plymouth, like a 51 Plymouth. It has an offset wire, but I just stuck it in a non-conductive washer, and then I've got it centered there, and then we can pull the wire down through, and then that'll set here for the horn ring to make contact. And this is the contactor that'll touch this guy, depending on where you rock the the horn button. You just got to make contact with that. So now we got the turn signal so that the flasher inside here works also. And I've started to install the steering components. There's a bushing, tapered bushing that goes down in there to make this nice and solid, and then a spring. And then we've got some other components over here that we've got to put on. And got to get this on the back of the steering wheel. Got all the horn pieces in place. Soldered a big ball on there to make it bigger, to make contact. was just a little touch on that side, but not too bad. I placed a long ladder along the back of the wheels and the front of the wheels to make sure they were in alignment, to set the wheel at the what I'll call 0 position. And then we've got the Kaiser cap. There's a rubber O-ring on there, helps keep it in place. And I'll go unhook the horn so I can get that O-ring to seat. Okay, got the K on there. The O-ring was just a little too thick with the newer chrome plating on there, so I shaved it down a little bit and worked it in there and hooked the horn back up. So I think we're good to go. Had that steering wheel part, and I forgot to put this spring that keeps that tapered bushing down in there. Had to take the steering wheel back off, so I come up with this interesting contraption, a puller with some cloths on the teeth so it doesn't scratch the paint, and then I strapped to keep pressure so that the jaws couldn't spread apart, and it worked great. Just it got the wheel right off there. For this horn wire, just because that thing just sets up here on the wheel, one concern I have is, you know, this thing can float up and down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is to keep that thing in position, I found a rubber grommet, and I'm going to use a clamp. So I'll put just a little bit of tension on the wire and then clamp it down here so that it keeps the wire tight and that thing can't move up there. Okay, now I've got a little clamp on there, a little bit of tension, just keeps the horn contact in the same position all the time. Once you get that in position, you just have to make really small gaps between all 3 of those tabs and that contact solder point, and then that way any way you push the horn ring, it'll make contact. If we have it properly adjusted, it's good. Had to tear the turn signal control back out. In the 0 position in the center here, there's the red wire is making contact with the orange wire, which is the left brake light. And so what was happening is when I'd hit the brake signal comes up through this signal and then goes back out to the brake lights. Well, those contacts weren't being made in there, so when I'd hit the brakes, the left brake light would not come on. So the only way to fix that is get that switch back apart. What had happened when I took it apart, you have to bend the tabs on the back to hold the box together. And I had just overbent that a little bit and got the box where the one sliding switch was wanting to stick, and it wouldn't quite come all the way home. So I had to loosen up my clamping on that a little bit so that those switches could easily go back and forth. You can hear a nice click sound now whenever you flip this. So that's it wasn't doing that before. The one side would just not really click. So get this back together. Do a quick electrical check. Got the lights off in the barn here, and I switched the lights and the blower. Guy on Facebook had a picture from the factory that showed you know, the light switch here and the blower there. So here's parking lights. Of course, our rheostat works. We've got parking up front. Yep, and the lights on the rear. Good. Gotta turn the ignition on so we can check some other stuff. I got the key in the trunk. Guy called me asking about my snaps on my convertible, so. And we turn the signal on. So signal indicator's blinking. Front light blinking. Rear light blinking. Right signal blinking. That one's blinking. It's good. And we'll do with the ignition on, we'll go ahead and check the blower. Yep, blower's good. Wiper motor. Yep, you can hear it running. I don't have the wipers hooked on yet. Turn the ignition off. We'll just go ahead and hit the lights here. Full power. Yep, both lights come on the front. Still have tail lights. And we'll do a quick brights check. And yep, the brights come on. The seat's out, so I can get ready to paint those pans body color. And while I was at it, I wanted to go ahead and take the chance to put the seat belt tags in. Luckily, I had all 4 originals. So the driver's side, the originals look pretty good. And on the passenger side, the guy I bought the engine from had some repops. So what I've done is the original's behind it, but one of the holes was missing. So I just stuck it behind it and put the repop on and did the same thing here. The original's behind it, so the car still has all 4 original tags, but there's a couple new ones kind of hold stuff in place there. I also took this bracket off. Had to re-weld that bolt. The upholstery shop, when they put the seats in, they broke the weld on that, so they give me an opportunity to fix that. So when I bolt the seat in, it'll be nice and solid again.